Good evening. We'll be starting the meeting very shortly. There is a sign-up sheet. If you do not want to speak on the record, you do not need to sign up, but it means you will not get mailings.
Say no.
Okay, or you just say no, but
You're not going to speak.
if you're not, as opposed to standing in line, if you're not here to speak, you don't have to sign in. We just try to know who wants to speak, who does not want to speak, that kind of thing. Thank you so much.
You want me to bring the sign-in sheet to the outside table?
What's my envelope? Okay.
Do we have quorum? No, we don't.
Oh. I can't find my glasses. Let me do my pocketbook. A quorum of the Committee on Housing being present, we will now call the meeting to order. For those of you that may still be standing, there is seating in the gallery above us on the third floor. I will read the call. The Housing Committee shall meet to continue discussions on the Affordable Housing Overlay District and other related matters. Good evening. Tonight, the Housing Committee is again meeting to continue our discussion on the proposed Affordable Housing Overlay District. As my co-chair, Council Symbol Siddiqui, and I have stated at our last hearing, we want to give tonight's hearing over completely to public comment, so members of the community can have their say and have it made part of the record. As with the hearing on March 5th and the upcoming hearing on March 28th, tonight's hearing is being televised to ensure that as many people as can participate will be able to participate in the conversation or at least view it in real time. I will note that the video of March 5th Housing Committee hearing will include CDD's presentation on the Affordable Housing Overlay District. It is available for viewing on the city's website. I am going to keep my remarks very brief because I want to allow as much time for public comment. If we reach the end of the hearing and there is still some time left over, I may add some closing remarks, as will my co-chair. But I really do want to focus tonight. We really do want to focus tonight on hearing from you. And opposed to speaking to you, we want to hear from you. The one thing that I will say at the top of this hearing is that it continues to be a high volume of emails coming to the council about the proposed overlay, both in favor and those that are against it. And as I've said in the previous hearings, it is critical that we all reach a shared understanding of what this proposed overlay is, what it aims to achieve, and how it would work. My hope is that the public comment we hear tonight will give us, this committee and the community, a better sense of whether we are, in fact, reaching the shared understanding. This is so incredibly important because it is only when we are working with the same set of facts and the same understanding of this proposed legislation that we can truly have an honest, open, and productive discussion about how best to move forward. It is my hope and expectation that tonight's hearing moves us a little closer toward that end. Right now, we have in excess of 40 people signed up here, and I know there are other people signing up outside the council chamber. So we are going to limit public comment to 2 minutes as per our rules. I ask everyone to please respectfully adhere to the 2-minute rule so that everybody else has an opportunity to speak exactly for 2 minutes. Anyone can speak less. We want to remember to be respectful to each other's opinion. I want us to not boo, cheer, clap, sneer, hiss, because we don't want to intimidate anyone that may have a different opinion on the issue. So with that, Councilor Siddiqui, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. I wanted to just thank everyone who's here tonight. This is a topic where we will be discussing some very complex issues, and there are a lot of people who have brought up different questions, and there's a lot of themes that are coming through, and I think it is instructive for our committee to hear these themes and for our staff to also hear these themes so that we can, by our next few meetings, we can have a further lay of the land on what do we do about these questions and how can we best address them. So thank you for being here, and we'll get started.
Anyone that has physical challenges that would like to sit on the inside of the bar, we welcome you to do so rather than standing or going upstairs. So please feel free, anyone that has any mobility issues. The first person that is signed up is Baud Woodbury, 133 Verse Street.
And I'll just say, if you could please state your name and address for the record, and if you have written comments, there's a basket right in front for you to place your comments. And there's cards sitting out there for you to email. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm Bob Woodbury. I live at 133 River Street at the corner of Kennard. I'm here to read a statement in support of the 100% affordable housing overlay. Like many residents, my wife and I are concerned about the loss of housing that in the past permitted more people with modest incomes to live in Cambridge. In our Riverside neighborhood, within a block or two of our home, we've seen 2-family and multifamily homes replaced by expensive single-family houses. We're happy to have these new neighbors, but we miss the diversity that was here when we moved in. In fact, we lived in a triple-decker that used to be apartments for students and families before it was gut rehabbed and converted to individual condos. So we're part of the problem. Over the last few years, Mary and I have taken an interest in Cambridge nonprofit organizations that build and maintain pockets of affordability amidst our city's relentless gentrification. We donate to Just a Start to support their building efforts and the many services they provide. Because we want to see the work of these nonprofits flourish and want to see the number of affordable homes increase, we support the 100% affordable housing zoning overlay. If this new zoning means that nonprofits can build more apartments and condos in Cambridge, we would welcome, for example, a new affordable 4-story apartment building in our 3-story neighborhood. We support positive, constructive action by the Housing Committee and ultimately by the City Council to pass this zoning and make it easier for nonprofit organizations to buy land and develop, build, and maintain new affordable housing in Cambridge. Thank you.
I wanted to make a quick,
Leave his written comment.
please leave your written comments in the basket. For those listening outside, there's room in the Ackerman room where you can watch the meeting. So the next person is Dana Brady or Donna Brady, and after that is Stephen Kaiser, and after that is Ed Brody.
Hello, my name is Dina Feldstein Brody. I live at 661 Green Street, and I've been there since 1982. Let me start by saying I do not object to increasing affordable housing, and I'm not opposed to having it in my backyard. However, this proposal is complicated and has drawbacks. The proposal removes significant zoning protections for residents. It disproportionately impacts residents who live near the overlay district. We lose leverage over size and shape and yards of new buildings while we bear the costs and drawbacks. The plan must give abutters and nearby residents a voice in the setbacks and the height. The proposal doesn't consider the long-term effect and costs on the increased demand for schools, transportation, and parking. The proposal took 3 years to develop. The city needs to publicize this widely and get more feedback over many months. Let me give you a zoning example. If a neighbor wants to move or change a window in her house, the zoning board must alert all affected neighbors, send details, and have hearings so all affected neighbors can comment and approve or disapprove. Let's have the city do something like this. On a personal note, my house is on a residential street that abuts the Mass Ave corridor. We already have an affordable housing building nearby and some large buildings in back of us. With existing zoning, a developer could build a good-sized building facing my backyard with a 20-foot rear setback of green space and could house a number of families. With the proposed zoning, developers could build a larger and taller building right up to my property line, overshadowing my house and other residences. This would decrease the livability, enjoyment, and value of my property with no recompense or recourse for me. Thank you, and please address the problems in the proposal before acting on it.
Mr. Kaiser, followed by Ed Brody, followed by Wendy Woodfield.
Steve Kaiser, 191 Hamilton Street. I'd like to begin by quoting from the statement of the East Cambridge Planning Team, their conclusion. We asked the Housing Committee to abandon this overlay proposal, restart the process, and develop new and more effective ways to create affordable housing. I am totally in agreement with that statement. I have submitted to the council and to the city manager a 17-page report attempting to analyze affordable housing situation based on the information we have now. And the information is very limited. We do not have the Envision final report. We do not have draft zoning. There's no definition of what low-income, moderate-income, or middle-income housing is in either the zoning regulations or in any of these reports. There's no financial analysis from the city. Absolutely vital that we have that. No assessment of costs and subsidies. The estimated FAR increase that I'm running into, looking at 3 sites, varies between tripling of FAR and 10 times the FAR. This is an extraordinary change. The bigger the lot, the larger the FAR change. So we need more preservation of housing. We need more housing built on vacant lots, in particular parking lots. We need less of a threat to the housing areas of the city. We also need compliance with law and the state constitution. So I'm urging that the Cambridge City Manager take over this project, put out a financial analysis, and start all over. Thank you.
Mr. Ed Brody, followed by Wendy Woodfield, followed by Elaine Surratt.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed Brody. I live at 661 Green Street, and I'll abbreviate my remarks, but I'll put my full remarks in the basket. I have just a few points, but they all speak to having a thoughtful and unhurried process around this proposal. First, I support and have the utmost respect for Justice Start and the CHA, but the overlay zoning proposal is hoping to attract commercial developers and insofar as subsidies allow a wider range of opportunity to developers and property owners without increasing their risk or decreasing their profits, the city should be very careful to protect its investment from abuse and support and fund mechanisms for doing so. Second, Once residential abutters give up rights now provided by zoning, it would be likely impossible to recover protections once less restrictive as of right zoning is in place. It seems to me that relaxing zoning to allow 80-foot, 7-story buildings in areas currently zoned for 45-foot maximum heights is a substantial taking from resident abutters. Third, it's not clear to me from the presentation a few weeks ago whether a developer who declines to accept the recommendations of the Planning Board's review would still be granted a permit if the as-of-right zoning parameters were followed. And finally, I'm not an economic expert, but I do know that subsidies do create inefficiencies in markets, so you have to be careful to weigh the effects of the subsidies over their term. It would be wise to have a thorough, publicly available economic study of the subsidy program before implementing it. I urge patience and openness in this process, and thank you for your time.
Mr. Wendy Woodfield, followed by Elaine Surratt, followed by Jean Gillis.
I'm Ms., not Mr. Esteemed City Council, I am asking the Council to vote against the 100% affordable overlay as written because there are too many questions and details that need to be explained. We need to study how height and density will impact the city, and I want to maintain the planning board process that includes public input and the ability to challenge bad projects. Finally, but not by any means the end, I want tenant protection. My name is Wendy C.M. Woodfield. I live on 395 Broadway, 02139.
Elaine Surratt, followed by Jean Gillis, followed by Elon Levy.
My name is Ellen Sorrow. I live at 2 Mount Auburn.
Could you speak into the
Mike is
mic?
a little
Yeah, you
taller
can just
than
pull
I
it
am.
down. Great.
My name is Ellen Sorrow. I live at 2 Mount Auburn Street, which is affordable housing. I know something of what it means for a person to need affordable housing. And I am, to the chair, Denise Simmons, members of the Housing Committee, and concerned residents. And I am aware of the need for more affordable housing. We need more, and we should get it without destroying what exists and forcing out residents in order to build new affordable housing. The overlay will hurt Cambridge in many ways. I'll focus on trees and light. The day before the moratorium on cutting trees, I saw more than 1 yard where a tree was being cut down. The city's tree canopy has declined steadily for years, as one person after another says, we'll cut down only a few trees. A few times 1,000 trees is a lot to lose. The overlay as proposed destroys mature trees by reducing open space, by not requiring trees to replace those cut to build, and by setting the side property setback only 5 feet from the line. The shift to greater density will diminish the tree canopy if ways to moderate are not provided. We don't know how many trees will die due to implementing this overlay. We do know that we need an informed estimate before we decide on this proposal. Another canopy that is already affecting Cambridge is the increasing height of buildings. As taller structures increase in numbers, natural light
Hello?
diminishes.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties, but
2 minutes is up.
your 2 minutes is up. If you could please leave your comments in the basket. Thank you so much.
You get it?
Jean Gillis is next, followed by Elan Levy, followed by Jay Amplet.
I don't know. Do you have one on yours? Do you want to use yours?
Is Jean out there? Going once? Okay. Mr. Levy, you can go forward.
Elan Levy, 148 Spring Street, East Cambridge. I'm coming here to talk about a couple of things. First, I would like to talk about how we're framing this debate. No one that is either for or against this overlay is against affordable housing or people in need being helped. No one. The main point that we are trying to argue, especially the people, I guess, who are against this overlay, is the fact that the proposal doesn't meet the ambitions that we are trying to achieve. That is the first point. The second one is that when we started this master planning process, in the policy order, the idea was to come out with a comprehensive plan that would include affordable housing, not to have affordable housing as the centerpiece of the outcome without actually addressing all of the traffic, parking, and major issues that are a constantly affecting residents of Cambridge. Now, there is one more thing that really ticks me, and that is the fact that we're talking about just affordable housing. What we really need is an equitable solution across the board so that people who live in affordable housing can actually find affordable food. And we know that a food desert exists in Cambridge, in many areas. So have we considered that? And have we considered the growth that is going to result from this overlay? And have we planned for this supply of affordability to be available to those residents? I don't think we have. The broadband, public broadband, is a good example. The other place where I'm stricken is I heard recently from one of my neighbors that during a school presentation, they were told that with a 5% increase in the population of the city, our school would be at full capacity. This overlay
Please leave your comments.
Similar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Amplet, followed by A. Porter, followed by O. Patterson. Anyone by the name of Mr. I don't know if it's Mr. or Mrs. Amplet? A. Porter?
Her name is Janet.
Janet?
Janet.
Janet out there? I think maybe this is Ann Porter. Is Ann Porter out there? How about O. Patterson? J. Corner? G. Dufford? Anthony Thomas?
All right, here comes someone.
Hello, my name is Anthony Thomas, and I reside at 348 Franklin Street. Excuse me. And I'm here to speak in support of the proposed 100% affordable housing overlay. Over the past 8 years that I've lived here in Cambridge, I've seen businesses flock to our community at an unimaginable pace. Property values are rising because of lack of supply, and it's becoming increasingly more difficult for people to have the opportunity to live here in Cambridge. It's also becoming more difficult for people who have lived here in Cambridge to stay here in Cambridge. I get that I am a part of the problem. I have a fairly well-paying job and can afford to rent my 2-bedroom apartment that my roommate and I share. I get that more businesses and higher property values mean that the city has more tax revenue to spend on running the city. But the city of Cambridge and us residents should be doing everything that we can to support affordable housing. The people who are being displaced from Cambridge are the people who have made it such an amazing community, full of art, music, and culture. Cambridge isn't just a suburb of Boston. There are 6 MBTA rapid transit stations here in Cambridge, and there are 5 key bus routes. Cambridge's connectivity is arguably second only to Boston in its transit connections. Cambridge's connectivity requires us to take bold moves to support more affordable housing. Committees like this get asked to make hard decisions all the time. This is not one of those times. This is easy, so let's get it done. Thank you.
Could you email your comments in if you don't mind? There's
Will
a
do.
card out there. Thank you. Stephen Ardman, followed by Tanaha. I apologize, I cannot read the last name. Aaron Kemp, followed by Aaron Kemp, followed by Derek Kaplan.
I'm Stephen Erdman. I live at 240 Charles Street.
I'm Tanaya Srini, and I live at 440 Mass Ave.
We're here today to read excerpts from a letter signed by more than 70 students from MIT's Department of Urban Studies and Planning. As members of the Cambridge community and as city planners who strive to promote equity, we believe that the proposed 100% affordable housing overlay is an effective means of creating more affordable housing and a moral imperative to realize a more inclusive community. We are in a housing crisis. Cambridge rental costs are among the nation's highest. Too often, market conditions displace longtime residents who cannot afford rent and must compete for housing with students. This crisis requires innovative and comprehensive solutions. The proposed overlay would be a step in the right direction. Cambridge wants this. We believe that those who are most affected by municipal challenges are best positioned to offer solutions. The overlay is a product of 2 years of civic engagement by Cambridge residents in the Envision Housing Working Group, who deemed the scarcity of affordable housing a key municipal priority and proposed the overlay as a solution. Approving the overlay would show that the council is responsive to the needs and demands of its city's residents.
This is an effective way to create more affordable housing. Relaxing zoning restrictions to allow greater density for affordable housing is one of the best ways to create citywide residential inclusion. We need to create as-of-right mechanisms for affordable housing development to occur, to reduce red tape and costs, and enable mission-driven affordable developers to better compete with market-rate developers. And this is a question of Cambridge's identity. Our city is often considered one of the most progressive in the country, but whether we actually want people to be able to afford to live here boils down to our willingness to welcome affordable housing in our backyard. We support the overlay as a tangible effort to realize the progressive values that define this community and our city. We believe that the council should vote for the overlay to start a conversation about how to increase residential affordability, and we trust that the city will undergo a thoughtful public process that will consider all potential concerns. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, and please leave your comments and the signatures in the basket. Aaron Kemp, followed by Derek Capone, followed by Richard Kloblaner.
Hi, my name is Aaron Kemp. I've lived and worked in Cambridge for the past 10 years. I support affordable housing, but I have some concerns about this particular plan that would actually make housing in Cambridge less affordable for most people. The proposed plan would displace existing market-priced middle-income housing with below-market-priced affordable units. The relaxed zoning laws would give a strong competitive advantage to developers looking to tear down or convert existing 1- and 2-family properties into the now financially lucrative multi-unit buildings. As developers outbid middle-income families, this will drive up the sale price of existing middle-income housing. Long-term, as these smaller properties are gradually replaced with larger affordable units, the supply of middle-income housing would decrease, and their price would increase further. Most Canterbridgians do not qualify for affordable housing, so the primary beneficiaries of the proposed plan will be the real estate developers and those who do not currently live or work in Cambridge. The more effective the plan becomes at creating affordable units, the more lucrative it becomes for developers, and the more expensive the regular housing units will become for everyone else. So I wanted to propose some possible alternatives, and they're not mutually exclusive. One would be to increase access to jobs in Cambridge by investing in better public transportation infrastructure and subsidizing public transportation costs for low-income commuters who work in Cambridge and live in the less expensive surrounding communities. Invest in bike lanes, bike shares, carpools, and corporate shuttle programs to provide free transportation to those who do not have access to public transportation. Secondly, subsidize childcare and elder care costs for Cambridge residents to increase our ability to afford rents and mortgages in Cambridge. Subsidize construction costs or provide loans for current residents to rehabilitate existing buildings or create low-income housing units in their basements under the recently changed zoning law that eases the ability to create basement apartments. Thirdly, provide housing subsidies for low-income residents of Cambridge to preserve the diversity of our community and prevent current low-income renters from being displaced by rising costs. Since these subsidies would not be limited by the number of units, they provide assistance without altering the supply and demand curve like the new affordable units would. Pay for the subsidy by taxing out-of-state and international real estate speculators who have contributed to recent hikes in sale price and raised rents for Cambridge residents.
Leave that,
Appreciate your community.
or email that into the clerk,
Yes.
and there's a card right there. Next up is Derek Capone, followed by Richard Kleblanner, followed by Trudy Goodman, followed by Carol O'Hare.
Good evening. My name is Derek Hopon. I live in a two-family condo on Wright Street, and I've been a Cambridge resident for 8 years. I would be supportive of efforts by the city to provide rent relief to longtime Cambridge residents, families, and elderly people who are being priced out of their communities by rapidly rising housing costs. I would also be supportive of housing subsidies for people who work in Cambridge and contribute to our community, such as nurses, firefighters, school teachers, etc. However, I am opposed to the city using my tax dollars to subsidize middle-income housing for people who do not work in Cambridge, and I am deeply concerned by the potential impact of the affordable housing overlay on our community. The purpose of zoning laws is to make our city attractive, functional, and livable for its residents and our families. It is logically inconsistent to have two sets of zoning laws for affordable versus market housing. If it is undesirable to build a 4 or 5-story building in the middle of a row of century-old single and multifamily homes, or to build developments over green space with relaxed setback requirements, then it is equally detrimental to our community whether the housing is affordable or market-priced. If development is being hampered by outdated or inconsistently applied zoning laws, then these laws should be revised and should be applied to everyone equally. Having one consistently applied set of zoning laws for both market and affordable housing would produce the exact same total number of units to meet housing demand in Cambridge. It's clear that the reason for this proposal is to manipulate the housing market and to allow developers to purchase land and homes at well below the market rate through uncompetitive bidding processes. It is also particularly concerning to me that many of the affordable housing developers who benefit from this policy have historically given large amounts of money to fund campaigns of city council members. I searched the city records for contributions of just one developer named Sean Hope and found more than $4,300 in contributions spread over multiple city council candidates. I do not know the total amount of campaign contributions from all developers to all city council candidates, but given this one data point, it is likely in the tens and more likely in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I believe in this particular case, Mr. Hope lives in Cambridge. However, many developers who contribute to the campaigns of city council members live outside of Cambridge. So if the overlay policy and the transfer tax are passed, presumably the residential homeowners of Cambridge who paid the market rate for their homes.
Thank you. Could you please email those comments in? Richard Kleblanner, followed by Trudy Goodman, followed by Carol O'Hare, followed by Peter McCunback.
Good evening. My name is Richard Kleblanner. I live at 54 Western Avenue. I've lived and worked in Cambridge for over 30 years, and I've watched as the city has struggled to provide enough affordable housing, particularly with the end of rent control. And I've watched as our city has become less economically diverse over those years. I support the 100% affordable housing proposal. It seems to me well-crafted and detailed, and I hope the committee moves expeditiously to approve it. Thank you.
Can I give this to you?
Thank you. Is Trudy Goodman there?
Thank you very much. Thank you. My name is Trudy Goodman. I live at 1221 Cambridge Street in Inman Square. I've been here over and over and over again. For how long? I think very long. So let me make this brief. I support the housing overlay, but I want to add on something to it. I personally don't think it goes far enough, and I don't think it's specific enough. And let me tell you why. I am an affordable housing tenant, and the building that I currently live in, I have to leave that building after living there for 25 years because it's not a good enough building to live in. So I would say to you, there's two things that need to be added on to this overlay. One is there's a gentleman here this evening, Charles Franklin, who has come up with some very good adaptations I think the councilors might want to look at that would be a very good addendum to what you're trying to do here. Clearly, we need this housing. Clearly, we need it all over the city, not just in a few places. The other thing is I don't see anything in the overlay about the responsibility of developers or landlords in terms of how they are going to maintain their property. And one of the big crises where I live, which is a 15-story building in Inman Square, is that the property has not been maintained. Truly has not been maintained. So over 2.5 years ago, I suffered through a bedbug infestation where I lost almost all of my possessions and ended up with open heart surgery. The building is still not being maintained, and there are still bedbugs in that building over 2.5 years later. I say to you, whoever you have come in to develop properties, and God bless them for doing it, because we need more housing here, they need to be held for account for how they maintain their buildings, how they build their buildings, and who manages their buildings. It is incredibly important that be part of your overlay, and I see nothing in the overlay about that. Other than that, I would support that, and I would suggest strongly you look at Charles' suggestions, because they're very, very good suggestions, and they're a wonderful add-on to what you're trying to do. And what you're trying to do is so necessary.
We will, Carol O'Hare, followed by Peter Munkunbek, followed by Alan Sadoun, followed by Charles Franklin. Thank you.
Carol O'Hare, 172 Magazine Street. How about more information and less marketing? Mass and Maine spent 2 years on their rezoning effort on one lot in Central Square. Compare that rezoning with this fast-track effort, which will end in the summer when nobody's around. I am concerned about the process and the minimal, basic, fundamental information that people have. Yes, we're all in favor of affordable housing, but the effort to educate the public has been really pathetic, I think. What is the practical effect of eliminating FAR? Have we got comparisons of FAR caps with no FAR caps? How about some graphic examples of 80-foot buildings next to 3-story buildings? CDD's only example of a 7-story building is the classic Mass Avenue structure that is isolated, so there's nothing to compare it with. How about the fire department? Have they commented? Will we hear from them about 5-foot side yard setbacks? And doesn't the proposed reduction of open space by half from 30% to 15% result in tree loss and reduced light for both residents and neighbors, which is especially problematic in 7-story building scenario? Why no discussion about public transportation? Where are the affordable housing projects likely to be located?
Please leave your comments in the basket. Peter Munkunbek, followed by Alan Sadoun, followed by Charles Franklin, followed by Larry Bluestone.
My name is Peter Munkunbek. I live at 33 Spark Street. I am a consultant only to nonprofits that build affordable housing, mostly in Boston. I don't do any work, paid work in Cambridge. I am the board chair of Justice Start. All board members at Justice Start are volunteers. There is no staff compensation at Justice Start that bears any relation to how much housing we do or do not have the opportunity to build. With regard to this evening's comments, Justice Start's position and my position is that we are strongly in favor of the overlay as it is written, which is to say that only 100% affordable projects would be benefiting from it, and that by itself is definitely worth doing. But frankly, the proposal would be, in my view, in our view, a great deal better and would respond to a couple of key policy issues if it were changed in the following way, which I'll get to in a sec. It is really important in affordable housing to build up social capital, which is done by connecting with your neighbors, and having a full range of incomes available in a given building is a very good way to build social capital, and it's one that it's intangible but critical, and we must seize upon it. The other critical tool, particularly in a high-cost area like Cambridge, is that we must have the opportunity, or should have the opportunity, for cross-subsidy within an expensive building such as we face in Cambridge. The city does a great job of making all affordable housing buildings work, but we would be able to do a lot more of them if some portion of a given building could have market rate housing within it. And I say this as a nonprofit developer. It really does help to be able to have that cross-subsidy. And certainly, we wouldn't suggest that a mixed-income building would have the same benefit from zoning relief as an all low-income building. What we would suggest is that it be in proportion
Will you
to
please
the
drop those
Yes.
comments in there?
that it would be in proportion to the
Peter,
number
sorry,
of units
we have
in
so
the
many
building.
people. I want to hear it, but you can please leave it in the basket. Alan Sedun, Charles, followed by Charles Franklin, followed by Larry Bluestone, followed by Alex Bob.
Hello, my name is Alan Sadoun. I live at 17 Pleasant Place. I've lived in this city for just under 6 years. The first 4 years I was a student, I lived in a 5-story building with a lot of open space. I loved it. Now I live in a 3-story duplex with not very much open space, and I also love it. Cambridge is a great place to live pretty much no matter what kind of a building you live in because it has wonderful people and wonderful resources. What I don't love is the uncertainty. I don't know how much my rent is going to go up next year or whether I'm going to have to move. I don't know how many of my friends are going to have to move, and I don't know whether they're going to move out of the city. And what I don't love is that so many of the wonderful people who make this city great are being pushed out and are not able to take advantage of our resources. I want everyone to have a stable, humane place to live in the neighborhood that they choose. Affordable housing provides that stability, and we should have it everywhere. I think this overlay doesn't go far enough. I think the height limit should be raised so that even more affordable housing can be built. We should be giving the gift of stability to as many people as possible, to as many places as possible. But at minimum, we should support this overlay. We should also follow it up by continuing with the envision planning process with the Tenant Displacement Task Force and by passing the $20 million a year budget increase for the Affordable Housing Trust. Thank you.
Mr. Charles Franklin, and can you please leave your comments or email them? We'll have a card right there. Mr. Franklin, followed by Larry Bluestone, followed by Alex Bob, followed by Gail Carpentier.
Good evening. I am Charles Franklin, 162 Hampshire Street. The free market has failed us. Increasing housing prices are driving out our residents, the soul of our city. We need more affordable housing now. I agree that zoning can be used as a tool to accomplish this goal, one of many. The city has over 50 regular and special zones before counting overlays. It's maddeningly complicated. We need a 100% affordable housing overlay, but not the one the CDD has proposed. Its very simplistic two-zone approach hasn't sufficiently taken into account equity. I fear the CDD plan proposal will effectively deny low-income families the ability to enjoy the same kind of environment that those around them have. No one should have to look out the window and see a beautiful tree across the street and long for one to shade themselves. No child should have to watch the neighbor children play in their yard without one of their own. This is not just my opinion. A friend of mine who benefits from the city's inclusionary program once told me, poor people like trees too. Yet the city's policies effectively exclude them from the benefit of tree protections and suitable green space requirements. I want families of all incomes to be able to live in Cambridge in the types of homes they deserve. This is why I have created my own affordable overlay. After examining 50-plus existing zones, I carefully and thoughtfully combined them into 8 affordable zones that span the entire city, each one reflecting the original zoning while allowing bonuses for 100% affordable housing. I don't intend for my proposal to be the final product, but I do want it to start a conversation that leads to a thoughtful and effective solution. Thank you.
Is Larry out there? Great, there you are. Followed by Alex Bob, followed by Gail Carpenter, followed by Alex Buchan. And for those who've had comments and haven't submitted it, it just makes it easier for the clerk if you email your comments, and so we have everything on record. So just wanted a reminder, if there are people still here who didn't email, please email.
Right there.
And there's a card right there.
Yeah.
Paula Crane at cambridgema.gov.
You got it.
Larry.
Okay,
please.
thank you. My name is Larry Bluestone. I live at 18 Center Street in mid-Cambridge. I'm here to fully support both the affordable housing overlay and a substantial increase in city funding to support such housing throughout all our neighborhoods. I'd like to briefly review where our city now stands and what must then be done to close the gap between our growing housing demand and our insufficient supply of affordable housing. So here's where I think we are. Our city's companies are growing, our universities are growing, our city is increasingly attractive, and consequently more people than ever want to live here. However, our overall housing supply, but particularly our affordable housing supply, has not kept pace. As a result, housing prices, as you all know, have rapidly increased, and the terrible consequence is that many of our neighbors no longer can afford to live here. Our amazing nonprofit affordable housing developers do not have a level playing field to compete with private developers because of high land prices, restrictive zoning, and sometimes onerous extended review processes and legal challenges. And though I'm sure everyone here in this room tonight supports affordable housing in theory, we all know that some of our neighborhoods continue to resist such housing in fact because of exaggerated fears. Finally, I know that all cities, by definition, change and constantly grow over time, or they wither and die. If we are to continue to thrive and remain inclusive, we cannot freeze our cities in amber, but instead welcome the changes necessary to support our urgent housing needs. So, as the Council tonight deliberates the overlay's provisions, I urge you to embrace an increase in affordable housing as our city's highest priority, and consequently act on the necessary changes, such as providing our affordable housing developers a more level playing field to achieve that priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Alex Bob, followed by Gail Carpenter, followed by Alex Buchan, followed by Mr. Raymond.
Hello, my name is Alex Bob. I live at 16 Eustis Street in Agassiz. I'm a graduate student studying city planning at MIT, and I also signed on to the letter. I'm writing to express my strong support for the affordable housing overlay zoning. The proposal is about making a more equitable city amidst rising inequality and allowing a more economically diverse population to access the resources that Cambridge has to offer. It's also about healing from the history of legally sanctioned racial and class discrimination that even progressive Cambridge is guilty of perpetuating. I took a look at the University of Richmond's Mapping Inequality Project, which shows the Homeowners Loan Corporation security maps, or the redlining maps for Cambridge from the 1930s. And unsurprisingly, the redlining maps for Cambridge match pretty closely with the maps of the distribution of affordable housing units by block group that the city posted on their website. Areas that were deemed safe in the redlining maps are the places where there's few, if any, affordable housing, while the red line neighborhoods hold the vast majority of the affordable units. The affordable housing overlay could help to mend these historic disparities by allowing access to neighborhoods that have persisted as exclusionary enclaves. I also wanted to touch on the effects of this policy on older adult, longtime Cambridge homeowners, many of whom have been vocally opposed to this proposal. I've been talking to many older adult homeowners in Cambridge, Somerville, and Boston for research I'm conducting for graduate school, and I've learned a lot about how the resources and amenities available to them in these three cities help to allow older adults to successfully age in place. But one of the great fears among these people I've talked to has been that that what will happen when they can no longer take care of their house and need to move someplace else. Most of these people recognize that the way prices have risen in Cambridge is making units, and the way that more...
Thank you. If you can leave your comments, thanks so much.
Perfect.
Gail, followed by Alex Buchan, followed by Raymond, followed by Yemi Kibrick. Thank you.
No one knows how to say my name. It's okay. Gail Charpentier. I've lived in Cambridge 30 years, 19 Murdoch Street, which is part of Area 4, now called Port. I haven't got all my statistics on my readout, but others have done an incredible job. I want to appreciate the city for the outreach to educate folks about this process. I've been to a talk I've seen Symbol at Cambridge Ridge and Latin Cafeteria talking about this. I've met people there who work for the city. I've been invited to two other meetings I couldn't make, one at JFK Apartments in Central Square, one at the Inman Square Neighborhood Association at Ole Restaurant. You've been all around. Oh, Erie Street. I've been there at the housing development there to learn about it. More could always be done. However, I am against it. The reason I'm against it is I don't think, and I agree with the East Cambridge person who spoke on behalf of his organization, that not enough study has been done about the livability that this presents, the problems in livability. What happens when you turn a small house into a cave when its roof is covered with a couple of large 6 to 8-story buildings. I keep imagining my walking lovely. I'm privileged to take a walk in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, and I can walk all over the place, and I love the wooden 3 and 4-story buildings. What's it going to be like to walk to one 7 to 8-story building, a couple of small 4s in the middle, a 2, another 8? I'm not pleased with this at all. No studies have been done on the effect of light, the traffic, motor vehicle traffic that is, pollution, and the tree canopy, which has been eloquently addressed. Thank you.
Please leave your comments in the basket. Alex Kukan, followed by Raymond, followed by Yemi Kibrick, followed by Tim Shaw.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm an undergrad at MIT, 471 Memorial Drive.
Could you say your last name and where you live? Thank you.
Alex Bokonjibo, 471 Memorial Drive. First of all, I want to thank the CDD for developing such a nuanced and holistic proposal, and the Housing Committee for consideration and public comment. I'm here to speak in support of the overlay, and in fact, the main criticism I have of it is that the overlay does not go far enough, and that it should be part of a multi-step plan to address affordability in the long term. If Cambridge claims to be an equitable community, an equitable, welcoming community, a vote against the overlay is a very concrete way of saying no to these values. The idea that we can maintain the current urban form of Cambridge in perpetuity is delusional and regressive. Cities will change and adapt over time, whether we like it or not, and I see the overlay as a way to direct this change equitably. Thank you.
Thank you. If you can leave your comments in the basket, that'd be great. Raymond, followed by Yemi, followed by Tim Shaw, followed by Elizabeth Gambosi.
Good evening. My name is Raymond Shikoy. I am the Advocacy Director at CEOC, located at 11 Inman Street in Cambridge. Having working at this entire poverty agency for over 18 years, I have to say that our biggest challenge has been housing, and continue to be so today because of lack of affordable housing. We see our clients forced to move out to another city, away from their family members living in Cambridge, or even having to commute long distance from their Cambridge employment base. Tonight, I stand here on behalf of the Haitian Action Group, who strongly support the overlay and could not be present because of time conflict. Haitian Action Group is a community group with about 35 multi-generational members, all living in Cambridge, either in CHA property or as a Section 8 recipient, and they signed this petition that I'm submitting to the committee. It reads, "We, the undersigned members of the Haitian Action Group, have lived in Cambridge a long time and came to Cambridge because of the opportunity that its diversity and welcoming spirit offered. We are concerned that Cambridge's future diversity city is in jeopardy without the establishment of a Cambridge affordable housing zoning overlay to address Cambridge affordable housing crisis." Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Yemi. I'm a community advocate at CEOC Cambridge. I lived in Cambridge for 13 years. I'm all the way from Ethiopia. I have 3 kids and I live in affordable housing, and I'm also here to support affordable housing zoning overlay tonight. I'm here on behalf of some people from Fresh Pond. I lived at Fresh Pond for 9 years. Affordable housing being helpful for me and for my kids. I won't be here without affordable housing, because coming from outside the country and learning the language and culture it's very stressful without having home. So you need a home to put yourself together and succeed your dream. Here I am because of the affordable housing tonight. So I have some petition from Fresh Pond apartment residents. I'm going to read it. We are understanding Cambridge residents support the establishment of Cambridge affordable housing zoning overlay to deal with Cambridge affordable housing crisis. The lack of affordable multi-family housing impacts us directly because we are currently underhoused and have been waiting list for a large affordable apartments to accommodate our growing family for years. Thank you.
Thank you, Yemi. Tim Shaw, followed by Elizabeth Gambosi, followed by Fritz Donovan, followed by Chris Mackin.
My name is Tim Shaw. I live at 147 Mount Auburn Street. I've lived in Cambridge since 1974. During the 45 years that I've lived in Cambridge, I've certainly seen the cost of living here skyrocket. However, I oppose the current proposal for a new overlay district. While the problem of affordability is a real one and is one of several seemingly intractable problems that afflict our city at the present, this proposal seeks to solve it by bludgeoning it with a blunt instrument. Granting the ability to build high and dense as of right across Cambridge would do irreparable harm to the city I've known over the course of 5 decades, and it would do it without solving the affordable housing problem. This proposal, while well-intentioned and trying to address a real problem, would have unintentional side effects that would be catastrophic for our city. I hope that the city will reject this proposal and instead go back to the drawing board and find a better way to address affordable housing that will preserve the aspects of Cambridge we all love. Thank you.
Elizabeth Gambosi, followed by Fritz Donovan, followed by Chris Mackin, followed by Peter Clegg.
Elizabeth Gambosi, 42 Irving Street, and I support affordable housing. We are being asked tonight to comment on a plan that is largely unformed, at least as far as what has been made public, and zoning that has not yet been written. I'm confused by the timing of all this and how this evening can be considered to fulfill the requirement of public process. How can you possibly preserve the unique quality of our neighborhoods without zoning that protects them? Our varied neighborhoods are what makes Cambridge such a wonderful place to live. Let's not lose that. Stripping the surroundings of a historic house and putting a large project right next to it is not historic preservation. And the setbacks proposed are far too small to protect neighboring properties. We already have too many examples of historic houses that have lost their context. Why should the quality of life be different for people who live in affordable housing? They certainly deserve large, healthy trees, open space, transportation and parking, grocery stores, schools, libraries, as much as any of us. This overlay plan does not provide for any of that. If we truly believe in welcoming all citizens of Cambridge, then we need to consider a far more nuanced approach than this overlay. Let's really try to get this right. I fear the highest price, if this goes forward, will be paid by people whom you want to protect. Residents of these projects will not have adequate quality of life, and those middle-class folks who have lived here for generations or were fortunate enough to buy at a reasonable time but have little except their property can easily lose the value of that one resource. The idea that the city can take away anyone's right to appeal a bad project is anathema to me. Lord knows there have been many projects proposed that were not built only because of citizen objection.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll take your public comment. We'll take your written comment in the basket. Mr. Fritz Donovan, followed by Chris Mackin, followed by Peter Clegg, followed by Marilee Meyer.
Starting now?
Yes.
I am Fritz Donovan, 42 Irving Street. I came here in 1955. Not one person in this room is opposed to affordable housing, and the vast majority of Cambridge residents are equally in favor. Then why are the vast majority of neighborhood groups in Cambridge upset about the 100% affordable overlay? The culprit is the process. Cambridge already has 50% more affordable housing than the statewide goal, and existing Cambridge ordinances require double the statewide goal. But this has been proclaimed an affordable housing crisis, so developers have been given the primary role in shaping the current 100% overlay recommendations to the best advantages of, you guessed it, the developers. And the citizens of Cambridge, including this committee, are being presented with the results. Those results have changed drastically innumerable times. In fact, the details of the proposal before your committee now was brand new just a day or two before your previous meeting, March 5, and had not even been seen yet by the vast majority of those in the room. But your stated goal of coming up with a firm proposal to the Ordinance Committee as a result of these meetings leaves us with the prospect that you'll be giving this hugely important plan a grand total of 23 days to mature from first draft to final presentation to the Ordinance Committee. That makes no sense. The issues are far too complex, and the measures recommended by the current affordable housing plan before you tonight are far too extreme. It completely throws out almost a century of zoning controls and totally eliminates the planning board approvals Cambridge citizens have depended on to air their views and seek the wisdom of housing experts to ensure construction of balanced and appropriate structures. Issues of density, tree canopy, history preservation, transportation, light and shadow, and basic quality of life are not even mentioned. And not surprisingly, the developers have even persuaded the drafters of this current plan to eliminate residents' right to seek remedy
Thank you,
in the
Mr.
courts.
Donovan. Could you please leave your comments? And please, no clapping. No clapping. Did you not hear me? No clapping, please. So Chris Mackin is next. Peter Glick, Marilee Mayer, Nicola Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Mackin. I reside on JFK Street in Harvard Square, and I operate a consulting business on Story Street. The overall goals and objectives of overlay should be applauded. We need to plan, and we need to increase affordable housing. However, the specifics of how we are proceeding should be criticized because of core assumptions the present plan makes about how government should work. The plan before you partakes in a practice that has crept into our political lives at local, state, and federal levels over the past couple of decades. That practice is the exaggerated outsourcing of complex and controversial public problems to the private sector. Rather than wading in to engage in the hard work of, for instance, direct funding of affordable housing on city land, it has been the choice of city government to push back from the table and defer to the smart and deep-pocketed private sector players who do this for a living. This deference to private sector initiative comes with a convenient, self-reinforcing rationale. We are told the city doesn't have the money to act otherwise. The city of Cambridge has made its low tax rates a point of legend and a principle. They should be neither. Taxes should be fair, and they should be sufficient to allow us to move from the role of spectator to that of actor in solving our most pressing problems. Surrounding cities charge less economically well-off homeowners close to twice, or in the case of Watertown, more than twice what we charge. The supposed virtue of low taxes obscures a vice. The vice is excessive outsourcing of public responsibilities to private developers. The claim that these developers are solely nonprofit is not supportable. It is within our power to pull back the curtain on this deliberate low-tax governing strategy that justifies government inaction. There are means to protect small property owners and low-income citizens from the brunt of tax increases that should be applied. Yes.
Please leave your comments. Peter Glick, followed by Marilee Mayer, followed by Nicola Williams, followed by Susan Sudzinger.
Hi, Peter Glick, 6th and L Street. Fritz and Chris before me both talked about the problems and the dangers of developer-driven policies, developer-driven politics. I agree. It's a very bad problem. Not because the developers are bad guys. They're good guys. There are noble goals involved in the overlay. The real problem is that developers don't think about the city's problem or the city's solution the way the city council should. The developers think about their problems and their solution. The city council and the city, our goal is to maximize the number of people we can protect from increasing rents. That's critical. The developers, though, is slightly different. They think about how do we maximize revenues by building more homes. Nothing wrong with that, but it's not our goal. You see the problems, though, with maximizing revenue as soon as you ask about the numbers, which one of our counselors was good enough to do last week. $500,000 to $550,000 per unit is the developer's estimate of the costs under this plan. That's not an affordable price tag. By any definition in the world, $500,000 is a very expensive home, no matter who's paying for it. It means that the number of people that we can help with this program is severely, severely limited. The other cost that the developers never quite get around to mentioning is the cost of displacement. So we have this little fantasy that we're going to build affordable housing all over the city, but let's get real about that. The affordable housing is most likely to take land that is currently sitting underneath triple deckers that are being occupied by people who earn well below the median or 80% of the median income in Cambridge. So we're going to be displacing lower income people to build luxury priced units for lower income people. It just makes zero sense. And then, by the way, when we finish with the triple deckers, I understand the next target is single story retail. Okay, single story is a lot less efficient than 3 or 4 stories.
Thank you, Peter. For your comments. Marilee Meyer, Nicola Williams, next after that, Susan Schlesinger, after that, Alexander Markowitz.
I'm Marilee Meyer, 10 Dana Street. Affordable housing, yes, but this overlay as written is unbalanced and will have unintended consequences. The city upzoning is a one-size-fits-all that shoehorns all the districts into a quick fix. We need creative alternatives, including family units, subsidies, co-ops, tenant protection. But how? 3 weeks of Globe real estate transactions listed 13 vintage multi-story buildings, losing not only 84 bedrooms, but the integration and diversity we all want in the neighborhoods. How do we address that? This overlay has a dramatic effect worse than Alewife and recalls urban renewal. Its executive summaries lack accurate information and consideration for individual neighborhoods. Older houses can be demolished and replaced by cheap and ugly buildings as of right, reducing green space and trees. Streamlining and eliminating FAR reduces the planning board's protective teeth in design review, leaving it to CDD staff and developers. They are against this. Residents have no recourse for protest, and now the untested form-based plan is newly introduced. What is that? Exchanged upzoning and stressed infrastructure for affordable housing can be a disaster. The goalposts keep moving during this 1-month rush job, and developer-funded groups seem tone-deaf to other concerns. Asking responsible questions is not elitist or racist. It is democracy. We need a workable plan that protects everyone.
Ms. Williams?
Good evening. My name is Nicola Williams. I'm at 8 Brewer Street. Thanks for having this forum to hear from the people the thoughts about the overlay. In fact, the fact that we're talking about these solutions in our housing is very important, and I know as city councilors you care. I will try to have my comments focus on all the things that say yes. But first, we need a comprehensive housing strategy that works for all Cambridge residents. The one on the table right now is a good start, but it's not good enough. So, I say yes to more affordable housing. I say yes to housing that is affordable for all Cambridge residents, not just 100 houses anticipated to be made by the overlay. I say yes to resident input in buildings that affect our neighborhoods. As a homeowner, I say yes to increasing taxes so that we have more affordability in our city. I say yes to more transparency. I say yes to the city providing more clarity. I say yes to thoughtful growth. I say yes to tenant protections. I say yes to more money for housing. I say yes to giving the people the information and in the correct way. I say yes to telling us the truth. And I say yes to a thoughtful process. We all deserve this.
Susan Schlesinger, followed by Alexander Markowitz, followed by Ms. Starr.
My name is Susan Schlesinger, and I live at 34 Glenwood Ave. I'm here tonight to talk about affordable housing and the need for affordable housing, which I think gets lost in this discussion. The number in the recent residents survey, affordable housing continues to be the #1 issue that people in Cambridge are concerned about. And there is a real gap between being for affordable housing and causing affordable housing to happen. Two council terms ago, the council stepped up using our zoning code and changed the incentive zoning, which requires commercial developers to pitch in for affordable housing. Last council term, council stepped forward and reoriented the inclusionary housing, which involves residential developers contributing to affordable housing. The affordable housing overlay has been discussed over the past 3 or 4 years among people who are active in affordable housing. And I'm really glad to see all you potential pro-affordable housing people here tonight, because we're going to need a lot of help. We're losing the battle with affordable housing. We're losing our neighbors. So when people talk about the affordable housing overlay causing low and moderate people to move out of the city, it's just not the case. We need more units of affordable housing. It's not the case that it's not clear who's going to live in this. It's clear that people of 100% of income and below are the people who will be able to live in this housing. The scale of this and the fear of this is just incredible. The housing produced in the city now, new units, is 60 housing units a year. This ordinance will help, even with the existing,
Susan.
produce
Could you leave your
more,
comments?
but not a tsunami
Thank you,
more.
Susan. Alexandra, followed by Mr. Starr, followed by E. Pullman, followed by Pebby Gifford.
Thank you, councilors. My name is Alexandra Markievich. I live at 6 Laurel Street. As you all know, we're facing a critical housing crisis in this region right now. And in Cambridge, this brings to light the issues of equity, fairness, and our priorities. We don't have enough housing for all the people who could benefit from the immense amount of resources that we provide in this city: jobs, access to high-frequency transit services, healthcare, and others. Housing prices are continuing to rise, and we need to match that by providing more income-restricted units and homes for people so that we can actually create a more equitable and just city. Market-rate developers can take the risks associated with building in such a high-cost area with high land costs, but affordable housing developers can't take on those risks. They're not looking for more revenues. They just want to be able to build more homes. They're facing insurmountable barriers. So as a result, we're losing, as Susan just pointed out, more and more middle, moderate, and low-income neighbors. The overlay is a concrete step that could address this crisis and would allow us to become a more inclusive city. It would allow developers to build just 1 or 2 more stories, and as a result, we would have the types of buildings that we already see in our neighborhoods and that are completely appropriate for a transit-rich, job-rich city. I see a lot of signs in the neighborhood saying that all are welcome here. The overlay can actually make that rhetoric a reality. I urge you guys to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is J. Starr here? E. Pullman? Pebby Gifford? Scott Hannon? Followed by Skip Schloming, followed by Nikolai.
Fortunately, Mark told me I had 3 minutes, so I guess this is out. I only have 2 minutes. All right, so my name is Scott Hannon. I live at 632 Mass Ave, right here in Central Square. My grandmother owned 2 apartment buildings down on Kelly Road. Up until 7 years ago, she never charged more than $800 a month for her rent because she said that nobody should live off of somebody else's back. That was my grandmother. She passed that on to me and my son. If you guys haven't met my son here, this is Liam Hannon. He started Liam's Lunches of Love, where he goes out and he feeds the homeless people that are up and down our streets here. No, no clapping. I yelled at that guy over there about clapping, so no clapping. So, here's the thing. We need to just step up. I'm sorry, I love everybody in this city, but these are semantics. You're worried about a tree in front of your house getting cut down? Go down the park. All right?
Scott,
here's the light for you. We
Scott,
have amazing
I'm going to
parks.
ask you to direct it to the committee.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, sorry.
you so much.
They're actually the ones I thought I needed to talk to.
No, you
so
got to talk to us.
I apologize.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you guys. So, here's the thing. It needs to get done.
If it's not exactly right, it needs to get done. We have people suffering. We have African-American women dying on our streets out here on park benches. We have veterans down here that are crying to me because they don't have enough food. Right outside a restaurant with $100 plates. It's time for action. It's time to stop talking about this. I'm getting brain freeze from listening to things that shouldn't matter. You know what's more beautiful than a tree outside your house? A single mom that doesn't have to move to New Hampshire to raise her kids. Or how about a dad that's a veteran of 15 years that was able to stay here in Cambridge and help people because Cambridge helped me out. You people, thank you. I'm not allowed to look at you, so thank you. Cambridge helped my family and made it so we could stay here. And it's time to step up and make that action. We need housing. Housing first. If you need to adjust what they're doing, adjust it, but get it done. Stop with the meetings. I feel like Allen Iverson up here. You're talking about practice. Practice, practice. Stop talking and act. It's time. We need this housing. We have people suffering. We have Wampanoags out here pregnant that don't have housing. And guess what? We're all on their land.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I didn't hear no bell.
After Scott, it's Skip, and then Nikolai, then James Zoll, and then Jeff. No, you're no. And then P. Flink. We have a lot of people, so I don't mean to be rude, but we got to keep it going. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Skip Schloming, 102 Inman Street, and I'm Vice President of the Small Property Owners Association. The damning feature of this overlay proposal is that it gives zoning relief only to tax-funded, nonprofit, so-called affordable housing groups. The housing that they build, as one previous person said, is not affordable. It's very high cost to build. It requires tax dollars for every bit of it. It's housing built or rehabbed to the latest code standards. It's done by employees in hired or rented offices with benefits. Compared to small owners, the small owners are the most efficient way to go. The problem with these affordable housing groups is they can provide, it's so high cost, they can provide very little housing. The city has promised or made a commitment maybe to give $20 million every year for affordable housing for 5 years. That money would produce about 200 units, but that's only to build them. So they have to be sustained in maintenance and repairs for approximately another, well, it ends up for about another 50,000, 500,000 for 30 years. And the tenants have to have subsidies. The rents have to be brought, the market rents would be high. The rents have to be brought down to affordable to them. So the city really is saying we're prepared to pay about $1 million per household to just 20 households. And I see no justification for a plan that does that. Now, the zoning relief that's being given to these nonprofit affordable housing groups is good relief. It helps them build more housing more cheaply. It should be given.
Nikolai is next.
It should be given to private
please leave your
owners
comments.
and developers. Everyone should
Nikolai
have
is
a copy in
next,
their mail.
and then James Zoll, followed by Mr. and Miss P. Flink, and then H. Jackson.
Good evening. Thank you, of course, to all the city officials here, but also to all the people in the
Your
community.
name and address.
Sorry, Nikolai Koshi, 387 Huron, 35 years in Cambridge. And I was just recognizing the amount of work that a lot of citizens have put in this debate. I'm just going to make 6 short points. The first is one that's already been made, which is the displacement or the risk of displacement of middle class in order to achieve maybe more affordable housing for some. That's something that I hope will be duly considered. It's been addressed far better than I could. Another point from an ecological level is the importance of high canopy. We're talking about canopy trees and so on, but putting a concrete block instead of tall trees restricts a huge amount of airflow, which impacts the quality of the air we breathe, the travel of birds, insects, seeds. It's a very important part of our biodiversity, so it might deserve to be considered. I'm referring to that in particular with respect to West Cambridge, where I live. where there are single-level shops and a bunch of tall trees, and it's remaining a fairly green area between Alewife and Kendall, which I think shouldn't be completely disregarded for the sake of whether it's affordable housing or anything else. Building higher structures does cause environmental problems, including, of course, heat island effects. The single-level small businesses that we have there on Huron Ave, on Concord Ave, are a really important part of the fabric of the neighborhoods. Everybody knows one another on a personal basis, sometimes not even being clients there. We meet neighbors by association through one of the businesses. This kind of neighborhood fabric, I think, is very important to retain. I sent an email today, and I mentioned in it that from a strictly carbon...
Thank you. James Zahl, followed by Pete Flynn, followed by H. Jackson, followed by Carolyn Shipley.
Hi, I'm James Zahl. I live at 203 Pemberton Street. Our existing system of zoning rules and our legal system and our method of financing housing clearly favors the production of high-cost housing over low-cost housing. This is demonstrated over the last, I don't know how many years, all over the city. In my neighborhood, I see modest one-family buildings, workers' cottages turned into expensive housing, small but expensive. I think there can be a legitimate difference of opinion over whether this kind of change in our housing stock is good or bad, but I don't see how there can be a legitimate difference of opinion that changing this kind of systemic bias towards expensive housing can be done without changing a lot of things in this city. It's clearly going to require change. In the public meetings that have been held over the last several years discussing possible zoning changes that led to this proposal, I've heard lots of people say, I'm not against affordable housing as long as it doesn't make buildings higher, as long as it doesn't put more people on the streets, as long as it doesn't cause more traffic, as long as it doesn't make it harder for me to find a parking space in front of my house. In a city election year, I've noticed that almost all the candidates list in their literature the rising cost of housing as a problem. The City Council has taken some steps, as people have noted, and has recognized, it seems, that that's produced an insufficient increase in our housing stock. And clearly a proposal...
If you can email your comments. Thank you so much. Peter, I think it's Peter Flink, H. Jackson, followed by Caroline Shipley, followed by Susan Leffels.
Lapidus.
Can I, sorry, Doug Brown, can I speak for H. Jackson? We had some sign-up issues. Doug Brown, 35 Standish. Since 2014, Cambridge has lost 13% of its 2- and 3-family rental units, over 700 units across the city. These naturally occurring affordable housing, or NOAA units, are the lifeblood of Cambridge's unsubsidized middle-income residents. Indeed, we have more of these NOAA units than exist in the Housing Authority's entire inventory. But they are fast becoming extinct in all neighborhoods, particularly mine. On my street alone, we've lost 13 units of moderately priced family-sized housing in older buildings just in the last 2 years, along with the friends and neighbors who were displaced with them. My neighborhood is being rapidly shredded by the market, and unable to compete, my middle-class friends and neighbors are the ones quickly losing hope. What's this have to do with affordable housing? Well, first, it illustrates that relying on the free market to fix our housing affordability crisis can be a misplaced hope. Second, if we're worried about the damage that rapid development can unleash on a neighborhood, just wait and see what happens when we increase the permitted density and the resulting profit margins by a factor of 5 to 10x. I've done the zoning math for numerous properties. In every case, the zoning overlay represents at least a 4-fold increase in building size over what's currently permitted. And in some cases, the multiples is as high as 13 times, with, for example, a 55,000 square foot building replacing a 4,000 square foot home by right. In short, though I'm not opposed to the concept, the way in which this is constructed places a bullseye on every older home in the city. Do we really think that this is a good idea? In 1996, the City Council downzoned the residential B zoning district to artificially reduce density and discourage backyard development. This had the side effect of rendering more than half of those homes unconforming and forcing homeowners to get costly approvals. At the time, the reason given was to protect neighborhoods from development pressures.
Thank you, Doug. H. Jackson, please leave your comments. Caroline Chipley. Susan Lepels.
Good evening. Thank you. Carolyn Shipley. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I live on Laurel Street in Cambridge Park. I have been speaking to a lot of people. I've heard from a lot of people who are developers, architects, people who know a lot about zoning, far more than I do. It's very, very complicated. And they all say that this affordable, 100% affordable overlay proposal won't bring any more affordable units than our current zoning. So I don't see the logic of it, and I find it unfortunate that so much time and energy has gone into this, and especially for people like me trying to learn about it. Also, I've heard that it's not going to be financially, economically feasible for some developers unless they can really build tall and dense. And that seems to be a problem. Another thing I've heard from people is the city has to put more money into the funds for nonprofits like Just to Start and so on, or they won't be able to compete and they won't be able to meet the goals. As a landscaper, I find the recommended open space not at all conducive to growing anything green. And also at a CNA meeting last week, we were told that if all the houses on our street are just 3 or 4 feet from the curb or up to the curb, anything built under this new zoning may also be up to the curb. So there goes the 10-foot setback at the front. And on the 5-foot setback on the side. Thank you.
After you, if you can leave your comments in the basket. Susan, followed by Christopher Skorhi, followed by Peter Chirac.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Susan Pittman Lowenthal, 385 Huron Avenue. When I first rented in Cambridge on Grosier Road in the 70s, my low income would have easily qualified me for the current affordable housing overlay zone. I get not owning a home or a condo. I get barely affording rent on a very meager salary. I'm now back in Cambridge, invited to live close by my children and grandchildren on Huron Avenue, living just a couple of blocks from my original rental. During the intervening years, I lived in Connecticut and learned a thing or two as an elected member of our town's Planning and Zoning Commission for over 20 years, including a stint as chairman. Overlay zones were discussed in the context of planning and invariably rejected because one size never fits all, despite what the MIT urban planning students told you earlier this evening. A word to the wise is in order. Reject this easy solution of a town overlay zone as the cure for income disparity and provision of affordable housing. Your planning board has not done its homework. Neither has the high-priced Envision consultants. More work is mandatory to get this right. When we in Litchfield in Connecticut proposed a new zoning amendment adding an H to the half-acre, three-quarter-acre town center, it was based on painstaking measurements of distances between homes, presence of accessory structures, existing setbacks, etc., before the amendment was proposed, to ensure we understood the real impact of the zoning change on an area in town. You have failed to do this as yet, neighborhood by specific neighborhood. How can you justify a universal overlay when you have no idea of the actual impact on a neighborhood? No one has bothered to evaluate the precise impact of adoption of this general overlay zone on each and every neighborhood in Cambridge. This is nonsense.
Emailing us that? That'd be great. We'll get you a card. Christopher, Scory, Peter, Kirak, Mora, and then followed by Mora Pensick, and then Esther Hainig.
Thank you. Ooh.
Christopher,
Is it
Scory?
Schofield?
Schofield. Yeah, it's
H-O?
S-C-O.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's it. This is you're Christopher.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
Christopher Scoville. I'm 28 Chatham Street in Mid-Cambridge. And I'll note that I'm a volunteer board member of Homeowners Rehab. I've come here tonight to voice my support for the 100% affordable housing overlay. I do this after some thoughtful consideration, having spoken with my neighbors on both sides of the issue and with those who are on the fence. What I've come to appreciate having had these conversations is that all of us here are well-intentioned, and all of us are here because we care about the city, its character, and the quality of life we enjoy here. What I've also come to realize is that the crisis cannot be solved by good intentions. And let me be clear when I say that we are facing a crisis of affordability, yes, but at its foundation, a crisis of inequality and injustice. And unfortunately, a crisis that is easy for many of us in this room to overlook or at worst ignore. Cambridge is a beautiful, vibrant, and financially stable city, and there's no reason to suspect that that will change anytime soon. But we as a city have to ask ourselves, who is benefiting and profiting from that livability and prosperity, and who is essentially being asked to leave? Who is being told that they're not welcome here, that Cambridge is full? I've made Cambridge a home for my family because I want to be part of a community that is vibrant, diverse, progressive, and welcoming. Welcoming to people who don't look like me, who may not talk like me, who may have almost nothing in common with me, and welcoming to people who may not share in my good fortune and privilege, but want and deserve to share what we have here. I'm tired of being part of a system of zoning and resource allocation that essentially criminalizes poverty, that places thinly veiled limitations on the degree to which people are welcomed and valued. So I'm asking you, and I'm asking my neighbors who are reluctant to support this measure, to consider something that's bigger than our small preferences, our vanity, our luxuries, and our minor discomforts, and bigger than our reluctance to accept new and different people into our lives. I and my fellow supporters of the overlay are willing to sacrifice a few hours of sunlight in our living rooms so that a family can avoid displacement. Willing to spend...
Thank you, Christopher. Yep. We'll take your comments. Peter Kirak, followed by Mara Pensick, followed by Esther Hainig, followed by Kenny Kimura.
Hello, my name is Peter Turchak. I'm at 720 Massachusetts Avenue, apartment 5. Apologize for the last name. It happens to everyone. I came here in support of the affordable housing overlay because Cambridge needs affordable housing. And the reason is simple. Cambridge is losing its low and middle income households at a prodigious rate. In just 9 years, Cambridge has lost 28% of households making under $50,000 and 17% of households making between $50,000 and $100,000. In contrast to the losses suffered by Cambridge's low and middle income households, the city has only packed on wealthier homes. Households making $100,000 to $200,000 increased by 16%, while households making over $200,000 increased by a stunning 70%. At the end of the day, the simple question Cambridge faces is this: will we take a stand to support families and friends who have lived in the city for decades, or will we instead stand by and watch them be pushed out? I say we stand, we get this overlay passed, and we keep those folks in the city. That's it.
Mora's up next. Esther has left. Kenny Kimura, followed by, and please leave your comments, thank you, by Laura Martin.
Good evening. My name is Maura Penzak, and I live at 346 Concord Ave in Ward 9. I come before you this evening in support of a citywide affordable housing zoning overlay and a city commitment of $20 million in city funds over the next 5 years. I speak this evening as both a longtime resident of Cambridge and as someone who has worked for 37 years with individuals and families who are homeless or at risk of being homeless. As a Cambridge resident, I have watched as too many friends, neighbors, and fellow residents have had to leave their homes and move to other communities because they could no longer afford to live here. As someone who works with folks trying to find and or maintain affordable housing, I am challenged daily to help folks find affordable rental units throughout Greater Boston. While the supply and demand for affordable housing is at odds throughout our region, unfortunately, here in Cambridge, finding affordable housing of any type is near impossible. It is unworkable for the middle-income retired couple who have rented here their entire lives and find their building being sold and rents that have skyrocketed. It is unattainable for the young mom who was born and grew up here but knows that even with 2 jobs, she cannot afford to raise her children in her hometown. And it is too often hopeless, even for the voucher holder that lost their home in one of the recent fires. In fact, it is no surprise or secret that more than 50% of CHA voucher holders have had to use their vouchers outside of Cambridge. This is simply unacceptable. We cannot afford to be a city that only a few can afford. We need to build more housing. We need to build more affordable housing. The proposed zoning overlay would enable this to happen. The zoning overlay would help ensure that our children, our elders, those who are disabled, and our families of all incomes can live, thrive, and enjoy a vibrant, diverse, and inclusive community. Thank you.
Kenny Kimura, followed by Laura Martin. I think Richard Kredzek left, and then followed by Nels Fry.
Hi, thank you. My name is Ken Kimura. I'm a business owner, a small business owner at 364 Huron Avenue. My wife and I opened our boutique gift shop, Gray Mist, 14 years ago in Huron Village. And although I support the idea of affordable housing, I believe the zoning overlay will have detrimental impacts on the various neighborhoods. Huron Village includes a very special and unique retail neighborhood comprised of a number of independently owned boutique stores. I am confident that the zoning overlay will drastically change the character and the quality of the retail neighborhood. I'm sure that the unique boutique stores will be replaced by corporate franchises, and Huron Village will lose its charm and its local village experience. For these reasons, I wanted to express my thoughts. And thank you, that's all.
If you could leave them or email them, that'd be great. Laura Martin?
Thank you.
Is Richard Kredzek still here? Nels Fry, followed by Mike Johnson.
Hi, I'm Laura Martin, and I work at Just to Start Corporation, and I live on the border of Cambridge and Somerville at 248 Summer Street in Somerville. I'm here in support of the Affordable Housing Overlay. Just to Start's mission is to provide housing security and economic stability for low and moderate income individuals in Cambridge. As a mission-driven real estate developer, I can speak to the difficulty it is to build new affordable housing units in Cambridge. Just to Start has tried to build new units on many quarters in Cambridge and has been unable to compete with the market rate developers in Cambridge. This overlay will help the city to build the affordable housing we need to continue to have an inclusive community. Thank you.
Is Nels Fry here? Great. Followed by Mike Johnson, followed by Dan Elsner, followed by Rhonda Chats.
Hi, I'm Nels Fry. I was born here and grew up here, but I actually live in Shanghai now, and I delayed my trip back to speak here. Do any of you know Cambridge's Chinese sister city? It's Haidian District, not a city, but a part of Beijing. It's a very poignant choice. It is for China what we are for the United States. The district has 3 million people, but 4 central sub-districts that are about the size of Cambridge with 7 square miles, and they house Beijing University, the Harvard, and the MIT, Tsinghua. Also Lenovo, Google, Intel, IBM, a million or so of China's best and brightest work there. 500,000 people live there in this 7 square miles, so the density is 4 times Cambridge. Local governments guide the market and make necessary interventions when needed. So there's a full range of rents from $300 a month, bedrooms in older buildings, walkable to both campuses, and luxury and plenty in between. Ample housing for professors, teachers, repairmen, police, everybody who needs to live there to make it work. The world population has quadrupled from 1.8 billion to 7.2 billion since 1920. The US has tripled. Cambridge still has the exact same number of people, even as density becomes even more important. And back then, there were perhaps many cities in the US that were as important as we are. Now there are 3 or 4 in the world. There wouldn't be much here without Cambridge. We're following this kind of restrictive zoning of like this, similar to various suburbs, 1,000 suburbs throughout America, or Boston or whatever. None of those cities would even be relevant without Cambridge. I mean, what I mean by this is, please consider that maybe my China sister city example is irrelevant, but Cambridge, of all cities in the US, does not exist in a vacuum. There's no time for self-interest, parochialism, and these various trivialities. Do what is necessary to stay economically competitive.
Thanks, Charles. Here's a card for you to email in. Thank you. Mike Johnston, followed by Dan Eisner, followed by Rhonda Schatz, followed by, I can't read this, but please continue.
Good evening. Mike Johnston, Executive Director for the Cambridge Housing Authority. I live at 2 Lily Pond Lane in Halifax. I commute up to the city. I've been a Cambridge Housing Authority employee for almost 29 years. Cambridge Housing Authority strongly supports the affordable housing overlay. Over the years, we have looked at various opportunities in the city and can say without a doubt it is almost impossible to compete in this market without something to level the playing field. Even with the overlay, Cambridge property values are so inflated that making the numbers work for 100% affordability will still be difficult. Basically, the overlay will produce a trickle, not a waterfall. So why do this at all? Why? Because Cambridge has proven time and time again that the city is about the people and the economic and ethnic diversity of the neighborhoods. Cambridge has shown through actions and money that it is committed to affordable housing. Cambridge should be proud of its track record on creating and preserving affordable housing and should be applauded in its substantial monetary commitment to affordable housing. But without tools in the toolbox, money alone will not work. The overlay is a tool that needs serious consideration now before it is too late. But why? Why? Because in Cambridge, the median 2-bedroom rents are $2,800 to $3,000 a month, which means a family needs to earn $100,000 per year to afford a 2-bedroom here in Cambridge. But we have over 19,000 applicants from those that don't make $100,000 per year. Of these, 5,000 people claim to live or work in the city of Cambridge. One of them could be a neighbor or the child of a neighbor, the clerk that ran up your groceries this morning, a CHA or a city employee, or your child's teacher. These are people just like us, and some of us see each and every day. We just don't know their need. Since the beginning of the year, the CHA has seen 41 walk-in applicants claiming an emergency need for housing. What brings them to our door is varied.
We'll take your comments. Dan Eisner, followed by Rhonda Schatz, followed by Mr. Robert from Corporal Road, followed by Adrian Musgrave.
I'd like to read something that a Cambridge resident wrote this past weekend.
Dan, could you say your name, full name,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
address?
Dan Eisner, 6 Bristol Street. I'd like to read something that a Cambridge resident wrote this past weekend. Some of the people in this room might know this person. Her name is Elizabeth Warren. Some state and local zoning rules needlessly drive up the cost of construction. These aren't necessary rules that protect the environment or ensure that homes meet safety codes. These are rules like minimum lot sizes or mandatory parking requirements. These kinds of rules raise the cost of building new housing and keep families from moving into areas with better career and school choices. This is from a piece that Senator Warren wrote about her housing plan for America. Her criticism of exclusionary zoning restrictions that limit housing opportunities across the country also applies to Cambridge. Senator Warren is discussing the very problems that the overlay will address. We can be a leader in easing the stifling rules that were created to benefit the privileged few. Some have voiced concern that by allowing larger buildings, the physical character of our neighborhoods will suffer. This argument baffles me. Throughout Cambridge, incongruous buildings abound. It's not out of the ordinary to see a triple-decker next to a single-family home next to an apartment building. Imagine a Cambridge where all the non-conforming structures have been torn down. How much of our city would remain? These homes of many shapes and sizes contribute to the fabric of our community and bring vitality to our neighborhoods. Diversity of housing gives us a diversity of people. This overlay isn't a panacea. It certainly won't solve all our housing woes. Even if it passes, we're going to have a lot more work to do. But the overlay will make it easier to build affordable housing and to help make Cambridge a more dynamic and welcoming city. Please, let's get this done.
Thanks, Dan. Is Rhonda there? Rhonda Chutz? So sorry, I couldn't repeat your name. Robert, Purple Road. After that, I know the feeling. Adrian Musgrave, followed by Nancy Alich.
Okay, my name is Randa Rattas, and I live at 88 School Street in the Port. I am going to be short and sweet. I'm speaking in support of the affordable housing overlay. If we truly care about equity, diversity, and sustainability, we should be supporting this proposal. Our current zoning laws don't reflect the way the city was originally built. They are restrictive and outdated to the point that if we wanted to build a city we have and we love so much, we can't. We have a housing crisis and an equity crisis, not only here, but in the region. Our land costs and construction costs are astronomical. We need to make it easier to build affordable housing in every neighborhood in Cambridge. Please support this proposal. It's a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Robert from Corbel Road there? And then Adrian Musgrave, followed by Nancy Alec.
My name is Robert Camacho. I live on Corporal Burns Road. The overlay, to me, is too much of a one-size-fits-all solution. It's really not planned out. It doesn't take into regard the different types of neighborhoods that we have in the city. And the rush to do this concerns me because I don't think enough thought has been put into it in the first place. And I would be curious to know the council's reaction to the fact that, this is not a Cambridge problem. This is a Cambridge, Somerville, Medford, Arlington, Belmont, Waltham, and Watertown problem. And all those cities and towns need more housing. No matter how much housing you put up in Cambridge, no matter how tall the buildings are, it's never going to be enough. And if we don't realize that, I think that we're going to make a big mistake going into this one-size-fits-all solution, which, by the way, impinges on the rights that property owners who have been here for decades will suddenly lose the ability to object to whatever is being built in their lot next to theirs. So I would urge the council to back off on this one-size-fits-all because, it seems like it's under the guise of affordable housing, but from what I've seen of buildings going up in the city, it's really to enhance the ability of real estate investment trust companies to put up any size housing they want in our city, and then once that building is sold, they get out of Dodge with all the money that they have made. Thank you.
If you can, please email or drop your comments. Adrian Musgrave, followed by Nancy Alich, followed by Burhan Azim, followed by Natasha Kessinger.
Thank you. My name is Adrienne Musgrave, and I live at 48 Haskell Street in North Cambridge, and I'm also a candidate for City Council. I'm here to support the affordable housing overlay and to urge passage this term because so much work has gotten to this point, and there's been a lot of great research around how to make this work for Cambridge. It also requires a huge amount of funding that we really need for the city, and so I think it's the right bill at the right time, and if we don't pass it this term, then we'll miss out on a future of more affordable housing here in the city. I have an 8-month-old, and we need to, the way that public policy works is it takes several years to put something in place, and if we don't do it now, then we're continuing to push the can down the road. Thank you.
Nancy Alledge, followed by Burhan Azim, followed by Natasha Kessinger, followed by Lauren Curry.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Alec, and I live at 346 Concord Avenue in West Cambridge. I am here tonight to speak in strong support of the affordable housing overlay and of an additional $20 million a year for affordable housing. I have worked and or lived in Cambridge for all of my adult life. My first job in Cambridge was in 1974 at the Longfellow Community Preschool. When I taught there, the school very much represented the diversity of the city, particularly in terms of race and socioeconomic status. I first came to live in Cambridge in 1983 and have lived here continuously ever since. I was a renter until 4 years ago when my wife and I were able, due to fortunate circumstances, to purchase our condo. During my years as a renter, I lived in rent-controlled apartments as well as apartments where the rent was relatively low because the buildings were owner-occupied and had been in the family for many years. My wife and I raised our son here, and he attended Cambridge schools from preschool through high school. He experienced the diversity of our city in all of its facets growing up in Cambridge. As a 27-year-old young man, he is very clear and very articulate about the fact that the person he is today is a direct result of the city he grew up in and all of the people here that helped to shape the person he is and is becoming. The Cambridge I first experienced and the Cambridge our son was born into is quickly disappearing. The affordable rents that allowed my family and me to remain in this city for 36 years, to develop roots and a sense of community, are essentially a thing of the past. Most importantly, the fact that the majority of my son's friends, the people he grew up with, studied with, played soccer with, and created community with, are not able to live in the city that raised them up to be responsible, caring, and socially active citizens is a tragedy. Our city has nothing if it no longer has its diversity, and if it is no longer a place where its own young people are able to live, set down roots, and give back to their community. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Burhan, followed by Natasha Kessinger, followed by Lauren Curry.
Hello, my name is Burhan Azim. I live at 471 Memorial Drive. I am here representing the new MIT Neighborhood Association. We had about 15 members here tonight. I wanted to share my view through a story. In 1845, Ireland was going through a famine, one of the worst in history. 1 million people died. Many millions more fled with literally nothing. They were refugees in the truest sense of the word. And where did they go? They went here, to Boston and Cambridge. In the span of a few decades, we went from 250,000 people to 1 million people. We welcomed them into our community. We built homes for them. We were bigger then than we are now. Nothing even close to that is possible today. I think we should be ashamed of ourselves that we are fighting over building maybe 60 units a year. It's a humble bill, and we should pass it. It represents the best of who we are. I want to note that the descendants of those immigrants, those refugees that we welcomed, form the core of our community here today. The grandsons of those immigrants are known as President John F. Kennedy and Senator Ted Kennedy. And I speak particularly here to Quinton, because I think that this is my story as well, and I know you have a similar story as well. And so I say we should pass this affordable housing overlay. Thank you.
Thank you, Burhan. Natasha from 243 Broadway, followed by Lauren Curry, followed by Charles from 23 Edmund Street.
Natasha Casamajor has had to leave. She had a small child with her, and she was not able to stay this late. My name is Lauren Curry. I live at 3 Concord Ave, and I was a member of the Envision program for the Housing Working Group, and I also work at Just a Start. And I'd just like to say that Ms. Casamajor is somebody who lives in one of our buildings, the Close Building, a 6-story building that was built at 6 stories many decades ago in what is a residential neighborhood, built as a storehouse and converted into housing in the early 70s. An opportunity that came because of zoning allowances at that time. I'd like to speak in favor of the 100% affordable housing overlay as a matter of as a solution to the affordable housing problem that is, first of all, going to be effective, it may not build hundreds of units, but it will create new opportunities in new neighborhoods to build sizes and types of housing that have not been possible before. And in that way, it will be effective. I think it's also a question of justice. It will open to affordable housing neighborhoods that have been closed for all time, essentially, to any households that didn't have down payment and money to buy their own home on a single-family lot or a two-family building. So as a matter of justice, and I would also like to just put it in terms of looking to the future, to justice in the future, as a way of correcting the exclusion that has gone on for decades under the redlining initially and then under the zoning restrictions, and to open our city to a new kind of future which houses more people because there are going to be more people. We can't preserve
We'll
the 50s.
take your comments.
Thank you.
Charles from 23 Edmund Street. Charles Teague, okay. To Ken Kimura, and then followed by Eugenia.
Thank you, Charles Teague, 23 Edmund Street. I was just going to, I have to say I support the East Cambridge Planning Team's rejection of this. Let me tell you a story that when they built the Takeda Biolab, when they got the zoning upzoned for that, I can't remember what the right number is. I think it was, as I recall, we got 276 units with the help of many of these people in the room, converted from expiring use to permanent. That's, at that time, we realized what the essential issue was that the MIT's growth and the lack of housing and lack of supplying housing for their incredibly rapid increase in the graduate student and the postdoc population, pushing them out into Area 4 and displacing the long-term residents, blowing up the community. We realized that was the problem, and Fred Salvucci of Mike Dukakis's Secretary of Transportation got up here at this very podium and called for the city council to have MIT build 5,000 beds of graduate student housing and build 1,000 units of affordable housing to make up for the damage they did. There's other things that more address the true problem of blowing up the communities, which this only helps. This is just moving the people that MIT has pushed out of their homes and putting them somewhere else and breaking up the communities. So I don't see this at all. Thank you.
Ken Kimura, followed by Eugenia, followed by Carol Winehouse. Okay. Ken is not there. Eugenia, followed by Carol Winehouse, followed by Justin Gee.
Hi, I'm Eugenia Schra, and I live at 259 Washington in the Port. So hot, I can't even read this. All right. Let's imagine that in the next few months, the media gets excited about Cambridge, and we find ourselves in the news. Our city councilors start getting annoyed that yet another reporter has called them asking for comment. Why are we getting all this attention? It's because even though we let ourselves now become a city that is forcing out its middle and lower income residents, we have decided to take steps to reverse that. And I'm just going to add in a note from my husband here. I hope he submitted it on time as he was told to do. But
Right. This is your 2 minutes, so.
he's a small business owner and wanted to write that part of those middle class residents who get forced out because of the lack of mechanisms like this one are people who work at restaurants and contribute to our diversity and excitement of the city here. So what I'm saying is, if we pass this affordable housing overlay, we finally will join the small, very small ranks of leaders on affordable housing. And if we don't, we're just another city that talks about how progressive its values are, but thinks that keeping its zoning code intact is more sacrosanct than having people of all incomes living within its borders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carol Winehouse, followed by, and could you leave your comments?
Excuse me, I signed up after she did.
You said, it says speaking yes or no, and it says no next to your name.
What does that mean?
But please speak. Just come to the mic.
I meant whether you were for it or against it.
You can,
thought it was fine.
please speak.
That's okay. My name is Sarah Mae Berman. I live at 23 Fayette Street, just a short block from Inman Square. I've lived there for 61 years. We've raised 3 children there, and they went to Cambridge schools. I see this overlay, though it was made with best intentions, as a pro-developer plan. Cambridge is already a dense city. It's one of the densest cities of its size in the United States. The densification that this provides will deprive neighborhoods of their character. I think that's a step backward. Cambridge has many different neighborhoods, and I don't think we should try to overlay one system of how to build in the city. The loss of open space and tree canopy is already targeted by your tree committee. The maintenance of affordable housing is an issue that was raised by somebody earlier who said that her building is very difficult to live in because it's not maintained properly, even though it was affordable housing. What I'd like to know is, do you have a definition of affordable housing so that you can only make a certain amount before you're not considered qualified? And then what happens if you get a promotion or a raise? Do you get kicked out because you no longer qualify? I haven't heard anything about that. All the neighborhoods should not look the same. We don't want to look like Kendall Square or North Point. We want to be the diverse kind of city we already are. I look at the Envision Cambridge plan for Cambridge Street, for example, and it would be a corridor like downtown Manhattan. That's not my idea of the city that I love, and I hope it isn't yours.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank
Take
you.
your comments. Carol Winehouse, followed by Justin, followed by Amr from 86 Buckingham Street.
Hello, my name is Carol Winehouse, 271 Concord Ave. And first of all, thank you all for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here today to say that I strongly oppose this proposal because no studies have been done on the impact of the citywide upzoning on water bills, property taxes, traffic and parking, local businesses, utilities, that's gas, electric, communications, and the associated digging up of the streets, trees, public transportation, and other issues. The proposal should be an election issue with councilors clearly stating their position. Currently, the City Council is rushing this proposal through before the next election. Thank you all very much.
Is Justin here? Okay. No, Justin. Regina? No, there was someone from, sorry, Councilor Simmons took the sheet that I had, but the number, the person after Justin was Amr from Buckingham Street. Is Amr from Buckingham Street here? Okay, after Amr is Regina from 86 Buckingham. Is Regina here? Is Tina Alou here? Okay, is...
There you go. Rescue the sheet.
Oh, you rescued the sheet. So again, I'll make is Justin here or is Amr here? I don't think they are. So we'll move on to Regina from 86 Buckingham. Doesn't sound like it. Tina is not here.
Right here, right here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, you're up.
Hi, I'm Tina Alou. I live at 113 and a half Pleasant Street, and I'm the director of CEOC. Over the last several months, I've attended countless meetings on the affordable housing overlay. There are always many people testifying for and testifying against. The reason for the opposition has ranged from the impact that will have on, I ran in from the other room, density, parking, and traffic, or how shade from a 3-story building next door would affect their ability to grow plants that need sun. But sometimes the comments on how locating affordable housing in their neighborhood would change the character of the neighborhood, and questioning if residents of affordable housing would feel comfortable there. I've been doing a lot of reading lately about the history of zoning laws in the country and their impact on income inequality and racial equity by segregating affordable housing. In town meetings, anti-density campaigners gave a number of reasons to justify their support of these zoning laws. They talked about how residents prefer to look at open space or stately homes rather than apartment buildings, which might spoil their view. They talked about environmental concerns. Although higher density housing was often more energy efficient, anti-density homeowners used environmental regulations and concerns as a tool to block new construction. And they talked about poor people and perpetuated negative stereotypes of people who lived in affordable housing. I know that's not how the residents of Cambridge feel. I was at the vigil at City Hall last night with many of you and saw the concern that people had for their neighbors and how they celebrated the diversity of the city. But current zoning laws do make housing more segregated and less affordable. Although prohibiting multifamily and townhouse developments in certain areas of the city and inflexible standards.
I'll take your comments. Is Faye from 36 Lee Street here? Or Marissa from 46 Porter?
Hi, my name is Faye Duchovny, 36 Lee Street, and I'm here to speak in favor of the affordable housing overlay. I believe that this is important to put nonprofit affordable housing developers on an equal footing with for-profit market rate developers so that they can properly compete and purchase land to build affordable housing units on. I think it also has an important environmental impact on the city if people who work in Cambridge are able to afford to live in Cambridge, not having to commute long distances and pollute the environment with even more car exhaust. I think that it'll improve the economic diversity of our city, and which is a thing that I value and consider important. And especially combined with the $20 million over the next 5 years for spending on affordable housing, this will enable us to have more units and have more people be able to afford to live in the city. I think that a denser Cambridge is going to be good. It's going to be more diverse, more welcoming to more people, and I would like the overlay to move forward. It's been discussed for 3 or 4 years now, is what I've heard, and it's really time that we get moving on this. Thank you.
Is Marissa there from 46 Porter? How about Lisa Wexler? Followed by Caroline Fuller.
Hello, my name is Lisa Wexler, and I live at 30 Churchill Avenue, which is one of the Cambridge Housing Authority developments. I have a petition here from 47 residents from the Daniel Burns Apartments supporting the what's being proposed. I grew up in a privileged section of North Cambridge and lived here off and on for 60 years off and on. And 10 years ago, my circumstances changed, and I found myself on a waiting list for Cambridge Housing. I was one of the lucky ones 7 years ago to end up in Cambridge Housing. I'm appalled at what's going on with the development in particularly outside developers, but some people who live in the surrounding areas in Massachusetts developing 2 hotels in Porter Square just recently without any responsibility of having affordable housing. It just gets my rage meter going. I went to Cambridge High and Latin and loved the diversity there and learned so much about what it was to be a diverse member of Cambridge. I do have some concerns I share some of the concerns that people are talking about in terms of density and things like that, but at the same time, I think there has to be some kind of middle ground. I would love to see some kind of needs assessment, both of people who need affordable housing and people who already live here and have their concerns. There's got to be some kind of middle ground that meets the needs of both the people who have lived here for years and have their concerns about their own neighborhoods and the people who have need affordable housing. We do have a crisis, and it needs to be solved. Thank you.
Your comments, Carolyn Fuller, followed by Bill, followed by Mr. Sullivan, followed by Renetta Shepard.
Carolyn Fuller, 12 Douglas Street, a proud 40-year resident of the Port, and a very proud member of A Better Cambridge, and a poster child for Yes in My Backyard. I am here this evening in support of the Affordable Housing Overlay. It is very easy to say Cambridge supports welcoming new immigrant arrivals, greater diversity, affordable housing, etc. But God forbid that reaching those goals might mean multifamily housing in our backyards. I walk the talk. I am welcoming 280 new neighbors in my backyard because I believe it reduces our carbon footprint to have more people living near public transit. I am now asking you to put your fears aside and welcome a very small number of new neighbors to your backyards because you say you support affordable housing. Walk the talk, please.
Bill McAvaney, David Sullivan, followed by Renetta Shepard, followed by Mr. Muhammad.
Hi, my name is Bill McAvaney. I live at 12 Douglas Street. So for me, what is before us is what type of city do we want to live in? We are losing our low-income residents. It's currently dropped below 15%. And I ask you to act to stop that loss from happening. This is a modest proposal. Its effect will be to bring the low-income population back above 15%, possibly as high as 16%. That's not a drastic proposal. I personally would like to see a proposal that addressed the entire waiting list for low-income housing, but this isn't it. So what this proposal does is address the imbalance between market rate developers and affordable housing developers. Currently, affordable housing developers have their hands tied behind their backs when they're competing with market rate developers for properties. Last year, I believe only 3 out of 50 parcels that became available were able to be bought by affordable housing developers. That's 6%, nowhere near enough to maintain a 15% rate. So not having a place to live is a far more damaging situation than having a building that is slightly taller next door. So councilors, I ask you, what makes Cambridge such a special place that so many people love? Is it the buildings, or is it the people who live here? I ask you to side with the people over the properties. Thank you.
David Sullivan, followed by Renetta Shepard, followed by Mr. Muhammad, followed by Mr. Rahil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is David Sullivan, 16 Notre Dame Avenue, North Cambridge. Let me begin by thanking all of you for staying so long this evening and for all the other meetings you've attended on this subject. I've only been to a few. And thank to all the city staff who have worked so hard on this. I appreciate what you're doing. I know a little bit of what that feels like. You all heard me the last time explain my detailed reasons for supporting the affordable housing overlay and the additional $20 million. in city funding for affordable housing. I'd like to spend 1 minute this evening responding to one argument I've heard a couple times this evening, sometimes from my friends, which I will call the NIMBY socialist perspective. And that is the argument that the main beneficiaries of this proposal will be for-profit developers who will line their pockets with lucrative profits from these developments. I'd just like to point out that the main beneficiaries of this will be nonprofit developers, all of whom you've heard testify this evening: the Cambridge Housing Authority, our own housing authority, HRI, Just to Start. Those are the main beneficiaries, and of course the ultimate beneficiaries will be low and moderate income people in our city. For more detail on this, I will refer you to the written testimony that I hope you've received from Larry Field. Larry is a former housing development specialist at the State Department of Housing and Community Development. He's an expert on the financing of affordable housing, and he is also testifying in support of this for the reason that, as he puts it, we need this if only to maintain the existing pace of development of affordable housing in our city. We're not going to be flooding the city with thousands of new affordable units. Thank you.
Comments, please leave them. Is Renetta Shepherd here? Is Mr. Muhammad here from Washington Street? Is Mr. Raheel Fari here? There's a person named, is it Peter? Peter L. here? Peter L. I don't have an address. Sue Butler.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. After Sue, we'll hear from Mary from 32 Crescent Street.
Many people have spoken very eloquently on the many...
An address?
Sue Butler, 14 Clinton Street, on the many forces that are active in this question and problem. I've spoken here myself many times in support of expanding the required affordable housing, and I have a lot of questions about this particular plan. It seems very forced, very pressured, extreme, Fritz Donovan, Nicola Williams, thank you for your thoughtful testimony. One of the things that's lovely about Cambridge is its historic feel. If you go north out of Harvard Square on Mass Ave, on the left, there are large brick buildings that replaced beautiful old Victorian houses. And they precipitated a stop to that kind of development, such that there was a yellow building on Fallon Street where the historic stepped in and required them to preserve the front face, and they could build what they wanted behind. They'd already demolished everything behind. But corner of Lee and Harvard Street used to have beautiful Queen Anne buildings. It's now a huge slab of a building. The idea of creating a city of anonymous blocks of building is horrifying to me, and I've spent a lot of time on this. I urge you to reconsider what you're proposing, take care of the affordable housing needs. We are in a climate change situation where we're going to see massive migrations. We're going to see huge changes in the quality of urban life. So protect our trees, protect some open space, take care of the poor people, take care of the middle income people, because the high tech is going to bring a lot of money here and we'll end up like San Francisco. And anything we can do to slow that process down will be to the benefit of us all, because our community is a treasure.
Suzanne Shaw from 46 Garrison. Garrett Quinn. After that, Sean Hope. After that, Phoebe Sinclair.
Hi, Garrett Quinn, Harding Street. Is there any chance we could turn the fan on, by the way? I know it's pretty hot in here. I've lived in Cambridge since 2005. And I've been an East Cambridge homeowner since 2001. And as a homeowner, I just want to thank the opponents of this measure on the council and in the room. They've done a tremendous work to help raise my property values. Without the hard work of the NIMBYs on the council and in this crowd fighting every single development, my home would have never tripled in value in 8 years. So please keep up the good fight and continue to make Cambridge a place where a starter home for a family costs 7 figures. Thank you.
Sean Hope? Oh, Suzanne Shaw?
Hi, my name is Suzanne Shaw. I live at 46 Clarendon Ave in Cambridge, and I feel really fortunate to have bought a house in Cambridge when I did back in the 90s. I want to speak strongly in favor of the affordable housing overlay and the additional $20 million for affordable housing in the 2020 budget. Like I think many of us, I wanted to live in Cambridge because of its vibrancy, its cultural, economic, ethnic, and racial diversity. I have raised 2 kids in this city who've gone to public schools, and they are the great people they are today because of growing up in a community like Cambridge. And I just want to really respectfully disagree with the folks who've talked about density reducing the quality of life in the city or the quality of life for people who live in dense housing. We have great parks, we have great schools, we have a wonderful library, we have fair-minded city government, and we have access to public transportations. Those are all fantastic things about this city, and people really want to live here. And we need to make it a welcoming place. That's what Cambridge is, and we need to put our money where our mouths are, or where our values are. So please strongly support the housing overlay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hope, followed by Ms. Sinclair, followed by Curtis Marvin.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sean Hope, 22 Fairmont Avenue in Cambridge. My family has lived in Cambridge since 1918. I'm here tonight to strongly support the affordable housing overlay as well as the $20 million in appropriation for affordable housing. I'm speaking as a resident, a zoning attorney, and affordable housing developer, so I hope my experience is helpful for the committee. I was part of the Envision process, and I have studied the overlay in depth, and I wholeheartedly support the concept of the overlay, as well as the draft language that has been presented as it is evolving through the public process. I strongly support the overlay for selfish reasons. One, I want to live in this city and raise my children in a city that has racial, social, and economic diversity. I want to live in a city that values people over an additional height of a building or how much of a person's rear yard vista is preserved. I want to have a city council that uses its legislative authority to draft bold, innovative, and forward-thinking zoning that encourages the future we want, not just protect the neighborhood norms and the status quo. One major misconception that I have perceived reading the neighborhood listservs is that the overlay will somehow lead to gross out-of-scale development that will burden schools, infrastructure, roads, the list goes on. That is just not the case. Next to zoning, the cost of land is the big elephant in the room. Briefly, I'd like to talk about 3 projects: Port Landing on Harvard Street, Frost Terrace out in Porter Square, and Concord Highlands in the Alewife area. Those are 3 parcels, those are 3 projects that the market has been looking at for years. How do I know? Because I get calls about them for years. Zoning analysis. Every time there's been something wrong, either the zoning is restrictive, there's environmental issues. My point is, affordable housing, new construction really happens only when there's an anomaly. Meaning, right now, you cannot compete with the market.
Thank you, Sean. We'll take your comments. Ms. Sinclair, Curtis Marvin, after that, Margaret Samp, after that, Charles Hines.
Hello, my name is Fuwebe Sinclair. I work at 20 Sacramento Street in Cambridge. I don't live in Cambridge because it is beyond my means. I want to speak to the complexity of this issue and note how conversations about things like affordable housing lead very quickly to polarization. I just want to name that and respect that reality. I just have 2 quick stories. One is that at the community agency where I work, we have out-of-school time programs. That's after-school, preschool, summer program. One thing that we've been experiencing in these programs is that our staff cannot live in Cambridge and cannot even live near Cambridge. Somerville used to be where people were coming from, but they're coming from further and further, which is having an impact on our staffing. And one other quick thing I want to note is I support the neighborhood council meetings. And at one particular meeting, the first meeting that I had been at where we talked about affordable housing. The interest in that meeting was enormous, and people came to that meeting who I've never seen before and haven't seen again from other neighborhoods. I can't say what that means. It certainly implies some things, but I want to note that that's part of the struggle that I see happening around this particular issue, and it's also a struggle that's happening very local for me and my neighborhood agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Mr. Curtis Marvin here, or Margaret Samp? Nope. Is Mr. Oh, great. After that, Charles Hines.
My name is Margaret Samp, and I live at 24 Inman Street. And first, I just want to say that tonight is an example of the value of community input, so I want to say thank you for that. And I'm going to keep it short by saying that I believe that the by right nature of the 100% affordable housing overlay negates future community input, and that's food for thought. Thank you.
Mr. Hines, followed by Jessica Sheehan, followed by Alina Toma.
Hi, my name is Chuck Hines. I'm the current president of the East Cambridge Planning Team. I'm here on their behalf as the president. We've looked over the affordable housing overlay, and we cannot support it as the way it's written. Having said that, we do agree there's a need to develop more affordable housing. In East Cambridge, many of our longtime neighbors have been displaced by raising rents and condo conversion. We've also lost many neighbors to developers giving them offers they can't refuse for their property, up to 100 times what they paid for it 20, 30 years ago. Luckily, many of our seniors who rented have been displaced, found new homes at our 3 senior housing developments in East Cambridge. Just quickly, I have to skim over reasons why we don't like this. First, the public process we think is paced too fast. The oversight, where it takes away rights for abutters, we think that's unconscionable to do that to help developers. It takes away the power of the planning board, which are experts on developments. And we really depend on them to help design good buildings. Equity, this proposal only serves people at the median income level or 80% of the median. It leaves out the most vulnerable in the city, including seniors and low-income residents. A family of 4 can make $107,000 a year and qualify for these units. I don't think that's not affordable for me. Environmental, it's going to cause problems with the reduced open space. In East Cambridge, it'll cut it in half. Any new developments, especially with the setbacks, everything on Cambridge is on the sidewalk. It's going to cause the trees in the rear of the properties to be gone, and it's going to cause street trees to have to be taken down.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. We'll take your comments in the basket. Jessica Sheehan, followed by Elena Toma, followed by Charles Korn.
Hi, my name is Jessica Sheehan, and I live at 99 Norfolk Street, right here in Central Square. I didn't get a chance to time this out, so I'm going to put my last part first. I strongly support the overlay because I think it will help us hang on to more of the diversity we currently have citywide. And now I'm going to talk to you a bit about where I live and how much I love it. I live in a cozy fourplex. My own apartment is a 4-bedroom within that fourplex, which I share with 3 roommates. We are a multi-ethnic, multi-faith, multilingual household. We come from different cities, different economic and educational backgrounds. We work in different fields and we eat different foods. We get along very well. At the risk of embarrassing my roommates, we call ourselves the Norfolks. And that's just my apartment. My street is also home to larger apartment complexes, a senior living facility, a school, a park, a beautiful church, and yes, even single-family homes. My community is harmonious and diverse. It is gorgeous. The overlay is modest and would not turn other neighborhoods into Central Square. But it would, as I said, help us hang on to more of the diversity we currently have citywide, and I think that's a good thing. I strongly support the overlay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Elena Toma here? Charles Korn, followed by Craig Nicholson.
Thank you. My name is Charles Coyne. I live at 6 Austin Park right over here. I've been here 25 years, and we're raising 3 daughters here, all in the Cambridge Public Schools. Affordable housing is a really big deal, and it's something that we really have to get right. The overlay proposal is currently laid out, has 3 main flaws as I see it. The density of right will gut any kind of design review. It'll cut out planning and community involvement, which I think is very important. I think one of the reasons why we're all here. We want to take part in the process. We want to be part of the solution, not have a solution imposed on us. It'll lose control. The city will lose control over development. Who's going to supervise this? These questions are unanswered. And I think fundamentally it sacrifices community needs in favor of developer expediency. I don't think that's the right answer. The proposal is too blunt an instrument. There's a lot of unintended consequences. Some of the setbacks, a 5-foot setback, and if there's so many non-conforming structures, you may find 5 feet between between buildings, which may cause fire issues, may cause a lot of other unintended consequences. The controls are very weak in the proposal, and it will leave things open. It'll open up chances for abuse. I don't think the overlay proposal is particularly innovative, and I think it's actually kind of disappointing if this is the only answer we have for affordable housing. We need to incorporate alternatives. As part of the community involvement process, a lot of good ideas have been proposed, and they should be part of this. For example, we should streamline the comprehensive permit process. I think that's the best way to get the community involvement. I think there's big amount of support in the community for affordable housing. 2, we can add super inclusionary zoning, which will help blend market rate and affordable housing. Perhaps a city ought to get more involved in development. Thank you.
We'll take your comments. Is Craig Nicholson here? No. Oh, you are. Great. Thank you.
Craig Nicholson with Justice Start on Cambridge Street. So, yes, for the overlay is the obvious thing. As an affordable housing developer, this is a key tool to allow us to compete in the market. The main thing that it does is it allows us to compete. I've had 3 projects over the last year and a half that I was not able to get compared to a market rate developer. And on one of them, the difference was 6 units on a 25-unit project. I wanted 25 units. There was no way I could guarantee that I'd get those extra 6 units. Therefore, the cost per unit and the overall cost of the project was not going to be supportable by the state, by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, by the other sources that go into an affordable housing deal, because it is a lot of different sources to do it. And then the idea that this is, going to line the pockets of nonprofit affordable housing developers is just a scare tactic. I think it's kind of below Cambridge in a way. Really, the only people, or not even the only, but the main people that benefit in this are the people that have a secure home that they can afford. And that's what it's going for. The diverse culture, the nature of the people that are here, the nature of the people that are already in Justice Start properties, being able to expand that offering, being able to let people take advantage of it like we let other people take advantage of it before. So move forward with this, support the overlay, and give us a chance.
Thank you for your testimony. That concludes public comment. We went over time. We went over time on purpose. We wanted to allow everyone that had signed up to speak. I wanted just to give you an update. The next meeting of the committee will be March 28th at 5 p.m., 5 to 7, and we'll have public comment at that meeting, after which we will have a roundtable that I believe is April 10th. Now, my 2 minutes are up? So, time is up. At the 28th meeting, we will be receiving the language, the actual ordinance language from community development. The next meeting, which will be a roundtable, will give us the opportunity to look at that language and as a committee, be able to kind of really tease it out and look it through. And so I hope that each of you, all of you that have come, have stayed and prevailed, will join us then. Please note, roundtable meetings do not have public comment.
So that'll be an opportunity to certainly sit in. It will be televised, but citizens will not be able to talk at that meeting. We'll not have public comment at that meeting. Again, I want to thank you for coming this evening. It's been a very long evening, but I do appreciate everyone's time and attention. This is how democracy works. On a motion, I need a motion on a motion by the mayor to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. The meeting's adjourned.
You think there was?
I think lots of people were thinking that they were going to.
They were seeing, I mean, we had.
I know, but usually there's a call that says, has anyone not spoken? Is there anybody who still wants to speak who didn't sign up? So I think maybe some people.
They do now.
Natalie, I'll give you a call, okay? I'll update you when I'm doing it, okay?
Yeah. But it'll come out.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
I have to rewrite it anyway for the sheet. No, not at all. Everybody over here.
No reason why you can't help me in trees. You can jump both.
You come here every evening to have a cup?
Aviento. Have a good night. Buenas noches. Oh, something fell just right behind you. No, it's right there. I can't. There you go.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I just couldn't bend over to get it for you. I'm sorry.
This is anything that was over there that was given by me was what I was.
We don't get to do community involvement here.
I did not see this, so I don't know where this is. I was hoping to see it. So I didn't see this, and I did put this out, and I did not see this. Okay. So,